It's Kingdom of Mist here again. What's the latest news from the palace today? King Charles had finally reached a breaking point, and the emergency executive order signed behind closed doors meant that Queen Camilla's stepdaughter, Laura Lopes, would never be allowed back inside the palace gates. What began as a high-stakes state banquet had instantly deteriorated into an international security disaster, but the hidden financial documents discovered later that night suggested a betrayal far more dangerous than a stolen emerald brooch. Before we go any further, take a moment to subscribe so you never miss the next royal investigation. Stories like this rarely end where they begin, but that single decision only makes sense once we go back several years. Today, March 20th, 2026, a legal and constitutional death warrant was signed by King Charles III, effectively terminating the presence of his stepdaughter, Laura Lopes, and placing Queen Camilla under a state of high-security isolation that insiders are calling a sovereign exclusion protocol, a calculated frame-up of the future queen, and a failed power grab that has turned the second day of the Nigerian state visit into a global laughingstock. The crisis erupted from the Yellow Drawing Room during the high-stakes banquet for the Nigerian president and the First Lady. The missing object? The Star of Abuja, a priceless 52.4-carat emerald brooch, a symbol of Nigerian national heritage gifted to the British crown just hours prior. Camilla is accused of using her high-level biometric access to steal the brooch, only to plant a stolen monogrammed silk handkerchief belonging to Catherine, the Princess of Wales, at the scene. This was not merely a theft of stones, it was a cold-blooded attempt to brand the mother of the future king as erratic in front of the international community. The digital security logs from the palace internal network show a specific biometric override at the door of the presidential suite at exactly 10:40 p.m. last night. While the state banquet was in full effect, the electronic locks recorded a security override using a primary royal clearance code. At this moment, Princess Catherine was confirmed to be seated at the main banquet table, visible to over 200 guests and a live satellite feed. Second, a junior dresser, reportedly under direct orders from Camilla's private office, placed a white silk handkerchief embroidered with the initials CME Catherine Mary Elizabeth, exactly 3 inches from the empty velvet jewelry box. Third, as the sun rose over London, Camilla's advisors began leaked briefings to select tabloid editors, suggesting that Catherine had been struggling with the pressures of her role and had been seen wandering the halls in a state of confusion near the drawing room. The narrative took its most bizarre and desperate turn at 2:14 a.m. this morning, as the Specialist Protection Command, known as SO-14, moved to secure the palace for a forensic sweep. Laura Lopes was summoned to Clarence House. In what sources describe as a theatrical display of false remorse, Laura attempted to claim responsibility for the theft. She claimed she had borrowed the Star of Abuja while severely intoxicated and had simply forgotten to return it. However, the logic of this confession collapsed under the scrutiny of Princess Anne, the king's sister and the iron enforcer of Windsor discipline, who pointed out fundamental flaws in the timeline that proved her physical absence from the scene completely. The silence echoing through the corridors of Buckingham Palace at 9:40 a.m. today, March 20th, 2026, was not the usual hushed reverence of royalty. It was the cold, clinical stillness of a trap being sprung. While the world outside was beginning to wake to carefully planted rumors of a distressed Princess of Wales, inside the king's private study, the iron enforcer, Princess Anne, was delivering a killing blow to the credibility of Queen Camilla and her daughter, Laura Lopes. The centerpiece of this confrontation was a digital file titled Tactical Surveillance Hallway B, a document that has now become the most devastating piece of evidence in the modern history of the House of Windsor. This was the moment the character assassination mechanism constructed by the Parker Bowles faction collided with the unrelenting reality of 21st century security. To understand how the Princess Royal dismantled this operation, one must look at the mechanical failure of Camilla's frame-up. The initial discovery at 11:45 p.m. on March 19th seemed to favor the Queen Consort's narrative. A white silk handkerchief, stolen from Catherine's private dressing room 4 days prior, had been placed exactly 3 inches away from the empty jewelry box. To the Metropolitan Police's initial sweep team, it looked like a classic case of a high society slip-up. However, Princess Anne, acting on a decade of deep-seated distrust toward the influence Camilla's children wielded over King Charles, immediately bypassed the standard police protocols. She summoned the palace's elite cyber intelligence team to extract the metadata from the North Wing's thermal trace protocol, a sophisticated network of heat signature sensors designed to track movement in low-light conditions without the need for traditional cameras. The thermal imaging data rendered the entire frame-up obsolete within seconds. The scans from 10:42 p.m. on the night of the banquet showed a distinct heat signature entering the Nigerian presidential suite. The figure captured was precisely 5 feet 8 inches tall, matching Camilla's biometric profile with 99% accuracy. More damning was the gait analysis. The figure moved with a rhythmic, measured pace characteristic of the queen consort, not the athletic, longer stride of energy seen in the Princess of Wales. The thermal rendering showed the figure pausing at the vanity table before concealing a high-heat density object, the Star of Abuja emerald, within the heavy, multi-layered lining of a state gown. At that exact microsecond, live satellite feeds and multiple press cameras confirmed Catherine was seated between the Nigerian president and Prince William, nearly 300 yards away in the ballroom. The gravity of this evidence turned the palace into a crime scene. By 8:30 a.m. today, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office had received an urgent, encrypted dispatch. The First Lady of Nigeria was reportedly devastated that a symbol of her nation's craftsmanship had been used as a pawn in a palace power struggle. The authority ladder of this catastrophe had reached its highest rung, a potential breach of the Diplomatic Assets Act. This is a federal crime under international protocol, and the king was briefed that the monarchy was facing a major diplomatic felony. The Star of Abuja was not just jewelry. It was a sovereign loan. Its theft within the guarded walls of the monarchy signaled a total structural collapse of internal discipline, leaving the institution exposed to public ruin. The desperation of the Parker Bowles family reached its breaking point at 2:14 a.m. when Laura Lopes was brought into the fold. Sources within the Specialist Protection Command, known as Protection Command 1 to 4, indicate that Laura was instructed to act as a guilt buffer. The plan was for Laura to claim she had borrowed the brooch in a moment of drunken bravado, betting on King Charles's historical tendency to indulge his stepchildren. This was a calculated risk. If the king believed it was a family mishap, the criminal investigation could be buried. However, when Laura fell to her knees in the king's study this morning, her confession was met with the icy stare of Princess Anne. Anne presented the digital log showing that Laura's own security pass was not activated at the palace gates until 12:15 a.m., nearly 2 hours after the brooch had vanished entirely from its secure display case. The confrontation escalated when Anne revealed the second level of the betrayal. It wasn't just about the emerald, it was about the systematic weaponization of Catherine's reputation. Anne produced a series of intercepted digital communications from Camilla's private office to high-level media contacts. These messages, sent at 7:30 a.m. today, sought to validate the finding of the handkerchief by suggesting Catherine had become erratic under the pressure of her future role. The king, who had spent decades trying to integrate the Parker Bowles children into the royal fold, often to the vocal displeasure of the late Queen Elizabeth II, finally saw the mechanism of the betrayal for what it was: a parasitic attempt to destroy the future of the monarchy to secure the present power of the consort. The king's reaction was an absolute executive shutdown. He reportedly looked past his stepdaughter's pleas and fixed his gaze on Camilla, stating that she had used her own child as a human shield to cover a diplomatic crime. He told them that the deception ended at that table. The king's final words before signing the expulsion mandate were reported as a whisper of pure steel. He told Camilla that she had not just stolen a brooch, but had tried to steal the soul of the family. He declared that the sun would not set on their presence in the house. By 3:30 p.m., the Sovereign Exclusion Protocol was activated. As of this hour, Laura Lopes has been removed, and the transition was handled with clinical finality. But as the rooms were cleared, the discovery in room 1844, featuring a forged will with alterations in Camilla's midnight blue ink, suggests that the theft of the Star of Abuja was merely a distraction from a much larger fraud that threatens to unravel the entire crown. The investigation into the Star of Abuja theft took a darker, more predatory turn at 5 p.m. today, March 20th, 2026. While the security detail was clearing the private quarters following the expulsion of Laura Lopes, a specialist forensic team discovered a hidden compartment within a false-bottom mahogany drawer in room 1844. Inside was not jewelry, but a second, unauthorized copy of King Charles's private will. This document represents the third and most devastating level of the authority ladder of evidence against the Parker Bowles faction. The forgery was chillingly methodical. The document was printed on high-resolution, watermarked crown paper, material that should have been under lock and key within the king's private archive. However, the most damning evidence was the handwriting. Alterations made in the margins, written in Queen Camilla's signature midnight blue ink, sought to divert precisely 18% of the king's liquid private treasury and several heritage assets into a private family trust fund designated for her own grandchildren. This was no longer a domestic dispute over a brooch. It was a sophisticated attempt at high-level financial fraud against the sovereign. Princess Anne reportedly presented this discovery to the king at 6:15 p.m. The realization that the character assassination mechanism against Catherine was likely a smokescreen to distract from this grand-scale embezzlement caused a total institutional shutdown. King Charles's reaction was described as one of absolute betrayal. He realized that the woman he had shielded against the wishes of the late Queen Elizabeth II had been systematically plotting to hollow out the royal legacy. Alongside the expulsion of Laura Lopes, the king has now authorized a total purge of the household. Exactly 3 high-level staff members from Camilla's private office, who are believed to have facilitated the procurement of the restricted paper and provided the biometric windows for the theft, were stripped of their security clearances and escorted from the palace grounds this evening. The war for the king's legacy has moved from the drawing room to the fraud department, and the clock is ticking on the most disgraced consort in modern history. As the evening shadows lengthened across the cobblestones of the inner courtyard, a second locked briefcase was retrieved from the floorboards beneath the writing desk. Inside lay confidential memos outlining a coordinated media campaign designed to undermine the Prince and Princess of Wales over the next 5 years. The sheer scale of the operation lacked even the seasoned detectives of the Protection Command. It was no longer a localized scandal, but a systemic infiltration of royal administration that demanded immediate, unsparing eradication. The monarchy had survived centuries of political upheaval, but this internal subversion struck at its very foundation. With the doors of the private wing now sealed under heavy guard, the institution braced itself for the final, inevitable fallout that would soon spill out into the glaring light of day, forever changing the destiny of the crown. This unprecedented betrayal ultimately sealed the fate. The clocks of Buckingham Palace struck noon today, marking not the midpoint of a successful diplomatic summit, but the hour the British monarchy faced its most humiliating international crisis in a century. As of this hour, the state visit of the Nigerian president has transitioned from a celebration of Commonwealth unity into a high-stakes legal standoff. Our investigative team has confirmed that the Foreign and Commonwealth Office received a formal note verbale from the Nigerian delegation at exactly 10:15 a.m. The language was described by insiders as clinically cold, demanding an immediate, transparent accounting for the Star of Abuja emerald brooch, and a public explanation for why a sovereign gift was used as a weapon in a domestic character assassination attempt. To understand the gravity of this diplomatic catastrophe, one must look at the authority ladder of the international fallout. At the first level, the physical theft of the 52.4-carat brooch is being treated as a felony under the Diplomatic Assets Act. This is not merely a palace matter. It is a federal crime under international protocol. The Nigerian First Lady was reportedly devastated to learn that the very host who had toasted to their eternal friendship just hours earlier was the primary suspect captured on thermal imaging. At the second level, the Metropolitan Police's Diplomatic Protection Group has been forced to open a formal file, an unprecedented move that essentially turns the Queen Consort's private quarters into a monitored crime scene. The most explosive element of this diplomatic wreckage is the mechanism of betrayal that occurred during the second day's scheduled events. At 11 a.m., while the king was attempting to maintain a facade of normalcy during a bilateral trade meeting, the Nigerian president reportedly requested a private audience. According to a high-level source within the Cabinet Office, the president presented King Charles with a series of digital alerts originating from Camilla's private office. These alerts, which had been leaked to West African media outlets, attempted to blame the misplacement of the brooch on the Princess of Wales's fragile mental state. The Nigerian president's response was reported as a hammer blow to the king's composure. He allegedly stated that Nigeria did not bring its national treasures to London to have them used as stage props for a Shakespearean tragedy. The desperation of the Parker Bowles faction to contain the Nigerian fallout led to the disastrous second scenario attempt at 2:14 a.m. When Laura Lopes was brought in to provide her guilt buffer statement, the plan was to offer the Nigerian government a private financial settlement to classify the incident as a private family accident. However, the Nigerian delegation flatly rejected the offer, viewing the attempt to use Laura as a scapegoat as a further insult to their national dignity. This rejection left King Charles with zero maneuvers. He was forced to choose between protecting his family ties and safeguarding international diplomacy. The future of the Commonwealth now hung in a delicate balance while insiders whispered about ruin. The king's decision was signaled by a total executive shutdown of Camilla's diplomatic access and a rapid deployment of institutional authority. At 1:45 p.m., the Sovereign Exclusion Protocol was expanded to include a total freeze on any communication between the Queen Consort's remaining staff and foreign embassies. Princess Anne, acting as the iron enforcer of this historic transition, personally met with the Nigerian High Commissioner to present the thermal trace evidence directly. By showing the Nigerian government that the palace was taking surgical internal action against the actual perpetrator, which was Camilla herself, Anne managed to prevent a formal recall of the ambassador. But the price was the total, public destruction of Camilla's standing across the global stage. As the sun began to set on this second turbulent day of the state visit, the scenario tree for the House of Windsor branched into a terrifying reality. The first branch, a total divorce, was discussed by senior constitutional advisors as a mechanical necessity to preserve the integrity of the crown. The second branch involved a permanent exile of the Parker Bowles family from all royal estates, stripping them of every honorary title and remaining privilege. Whispers from within the Privy Council indicated that the king was leaning toward an absolute severance of ties, unwilling to let personal sentiment destroy a thousand-year institution. The machinery of state was moving forward with terrifying momentum, leaving no room for emotional appeals or last-minute bargains behind closed palace doors. Meanwhile, the media storm outside the gates had reached a boiling point. International news networks had obtained leaked fragments of the diplomatic note verbale, transforming the palace into a fortress under siege. Reporters camped out in the rain captured grainy footage of black-tinted SUVs entering and leaving the gates at odd hours, fueling wild speculation across social media platforms. Inside the drawing rooms, aides moved in tense silence, acutely aware that every whisper was being scrutinized by global intelligence agencies and investigative journalists alike. The illusion of royal harmony had vanished completely, replaced by the harsh, unyielding glare of public accountability and constitutional crisis. The final hours of this dark day brought no relief to the embattled monarch. As reports surfaced of plummeting public approval ratings, the senior courtiers prepared for an unprecedented emergency broadcast scheduled for dawn. The documents recovered from room 1844 and the thermal logs from hallway B were already being catalogued for a parliamentary review committee. The crown had weathered many storms throughout its storied history, but this self-inflicted wound struck at the very core of its moral authority. With the shadows lengthening across the royal courtyards, the realization settled over everyone that the monarchy would never be the same again, and the reckoning had only just begun. Every single person within the household knew that tomorrow would bring absolute transformation. The ghosts of past royal scandals would pale in comparison to the structural earthquake about to shake the foundations of the British Empire to its very deep core right now. Reading Part 7, commonly known as reading comprehension with multiple choice questions, is often considered the most challenging section of the TOEIC test. It requires candidates to read a wide variety of single, double, and triple passages and answer questions within a very strict time limit. Mastering this part demands strategic preparation, excellent time management, and strong vocabulary skills. To achieve a high score, test takers must adopt effective tactics rather than simply reading every single word from start to finish. The passage in this section range from simple emails, text message chains, and advertisement to complex business letters, articles, and multi-document combinations. These contain one text, accompanied by 2 to 5 questions. They are straightforward, but you must read carefully to catch specific details. These present 2 or 3 related texts, such as an email exchange followed by a relevant invoice or schedule. Questions here require you to synthesize information across multiple sources. Before looking at the questions, spend a few seconds skimming the passage to grasp its main idea, purpose, and tone. Look at headings, titles, and formatting. Afterward, use scanning to hunt for specific keywords, dates, names, or numbers mentioned in the questions. A proven time-saving method is to read the questions before diving deep into the text. By knowing what information you need to find, your brain actively searches for the answers while you read, significantly reducing the time spent rereading paragraphs. Time is the ultimate enemy in this exam. You should allocate roughly 55 minutes to this section, because there are 54 questions spread across multiple texts. Spending too much time on a single difficult question can ruin your overall score. If you are stuck, make an educated guess and move on immediately. Many incorrect options are designed to trick you by using exact synonyms or paraphrased expressions from the text. Expanding your business vocabulary and improving your understanding of contextual phrasing will help you easily spot these correct paraphrases. Consistent daily practice is the only way to build reading stamina. Take full-length practice tests under strict time conditions to train your concentration. Review every mistake you make to understand why the correct answer is right and why you chose the wrong option. By following these structured steps, you will steadily improve your accuracy, boost your confidence, and easily conquer this daunting examination. The afternoon sun cast long, somber shadows across the gravel paths of St. James's Park as the official palace communique finally flashed across electronic news boards worldwide. The carefully worded statement made no mention of the hidden wills or thermal traces, yet its chilling brevity spoke volumes to constitutional experts and global observers alike. It announced that Queen Camilla was immediately withdrawing from all public engagements and stepping back from her official patronages due to unforeseen health and family considerations. Within minutes, television networks cut into regular programming, bringing in seasoned royal correspondents to dissect every syllable of the sudden announcement. The illusion of domestic harmony had shattered beyond repair, leaving the monarchy exposed to an unprecedented wave of public scrutiny and debate. Social media platforms erupted instantly with cascading hashtags and fierce arguments as millions of citizens debated the sudden downfall of the consort. Tabloid editors rushed emergency print editions into circulation, featuring dramatic headlines about palace betrayals and royal purges. Commentators on international news panels drew stark comparisons to historical crises of the past, questioning whether the institution of the monarchy could ever fully recover its moral authority after such a severe internal rupture. Outside the iron gates of Buckingham Palace, large crowds gathered under the overcast London sky, murmuring among themselves and watching the steady stream of diplomatic vehicles entering and exiting the courtyards. The public mood was a mixture of shock, fascination, and deep disillusionment with the secretive inner workings of the royal household. Meanwhile, foreign embassies in London were sent into a state of frantic diplomatic activity following the abrupt collapse of the State Visit Summit. Ambassadors from Commonwealth nations held emergency consultations to assess what the exclusion of the consort meant for future diplomatic tours and international relations. Sources within the Foreign and Commonwealth Office confirmed that frantic phone calls were being fielded from overseas governments seeking clarification on the stability of the crown. The scandal had quickly transcended a mere domestic dispute, morphing into a major geopolitical embarrassment that threatened Britain's diplomatic standing across the international community. Courtiers realized with sinking hearts that managing the public fallout would require months of careful damage control and relentless diplomatic outreach. As evening descended, the palace press office braced for an even greater wave of inquiries as investigative journalists closed in on the missing details surrounding the financial documents and security breaches. The meticulous containment strategy implemented by Princess Anne and the legal team had successfully prevented a complete institutional collapse, but the lingering questions in the minds of the public remained unanswered. Every citizen across the nation now found themselves asking what other secrets were still locked away behind the heavy oak doors of the royal estate. The monumental events of this single turbulent day had rewritten the modern history of the House of Windsor forever. The entire nation awaited the next chapter of this unfolding drama with breathless anticipation. No one could have predicted how profoundly the monarchy would change from this moment onward. Part 9 represents a crucial chapter in our ongoing journey of personal growth and professional development. When we look back at the first 8 phases, we realize how much knowledge and experience we have accumulated over the past months. Building upon this solid foundation, this section introduces advanced strategies designed to elevate your capabilities to the highest level. Success is never an accident. It is the result of continuous learning, unwavering dedication, and meticulous planning. In this specific phase, we focus heavily on mastering three core pillars: emotional intelligence, strategic execution, and adaptive leadership. Emotional intelligence allows us to navigate complex interpersonal dynamics with grace and empathy. Strategic execution ensures that our grand visions are translated into daily, actionable steps. Adaptive leadership prepares us to thrive in an unpredictable world where change is the only constant. By embracing these principles, you position yourself as a forward-thinking individual capable of inspiring others and achieving remarkable results. Let us explore the first pillar in greater detail. Emotional intelligence involves recognizing our own emotions and understanding the feelings of those around us. In any collaborative environment, communication is the lifeblood of progress. When team members feel heard and valued, morale skyrockets, leading to unprecedented levels of productivity and innovation. Leaders who practice active listening and genuine empathy build trust that withstands any crisis. Moving to the second pillar, strategic execution requires discipline and focus. Having a brilliant idea is merely the starting point. The real magic happens during the implementation phase, where consistency matters more than perfection. Every single day presents 24 hours of opportunity. How we allocate those hours determines our trajectory. By prioritizing high-impact tasks and eliminating unnecessary distractions, we maximize our efficiency. The third pillar, adaptive leadership, challenges us to step out of our comfort zones. The modern landscape evolves at a breathtaking speed. What worked yesterday may become obsolete tomorrow. Therefore, cultivating a mindset of continuous improvement is non-negotiable. We must view challenges not as insurmountable obstacles, but as stepping stones toward mastery. As you integrate these lessons into your routine, remember that transformation takes time and patience. Do not rush the process. Celebrate every small victory along the way. Whether it is completing a challenging project or mastering a new skill, you possess immense potential. And this ninth chapter is designed to help you unlock it fully. Keep pushing forward with confidence, determination, and an open heart,